starts with that line, De L'umat Zeh, page Ches, and we're in the final os of Basi L'gsni. L'chein haya mishkan me'atzei shitim dafka. Based on all we said above, we can understand why the Mishkan was made out of atzei shitim, which literally means a type of wood, but we're focusing on the Hebrew word, right? The word shitim means shtus. The big question is, why would God's essential home, where even he doesn't even dwell in the heavens, right? He's like the one place in the entire cosmos, the entire existence from beginning of all to the end, there's only one place which is called like the home of God. It happens to be capable of being made and constructed only on the physical earth, and it's made out of something called shtus. So why of all things would Hashem choose a material called shtus to hold his very essence? Now we can understand why. Hainu l'mayla min hadas, because Hashem cannot be held with some kind of contraption which confines him. He can't be held with the mind. He can't be held with the heart. He can't be held with the hands. Any body, any spheros, anything which is going to try to which has like an interest to contain, right, is useless to actually contain Hashem. Only something which surrenders its grasp. And what surrenders its grasp, at least its intellectual grasp? An animal. It's like, forget it, just undress yourself from the mind, and that's called shtus. The only thing that's called shtus to kedusha, something which is above das. And interesting, how do you get this thing called above das? Well, the only thing that we've got in this world which mirrors that is something which is below das. In other words, that's what David HaMelech said. I was like an animal with you. Therefore, I was continuously with you. It's not that David HaMelech was acting animalistic, like an actual animal. He went beyond the mind, and then he went to a state where the only way of grasping or reaching the level of shtus to kedusha is by taking something which looks like shtus of the other side. In other words, it does look animalistic. That's why he says I'm an animal with you. But because you have to use the animalistic level of life in order to use that for Hashem. Meaning to say that it's going to look like you're a juggler, right? It looks like you're just doing something shtusi, because that's the only tool that you have that essentially is not including your das. So that's what he says here, that you have to approach Hashem with something which is above das. But how do you get it? It's that which is refined from that which is below das. You have to take the shtusi animalistic things and use them for Hashem. And then you arrive at this level that you make a mikdash for Hashem, that he will dwell within each and every person. And you do this by your avodas habirurim, your refinement process of your life. That this ultimately affects that you transform the darkness into light. You go to this level where you're taking the animalistic realm and you're transforming it to something godly. Just like the animals in the offerings, right? You're taking an animal dafka to serve Hashem. Why don't we go into Hashem with our philosophy and our mind, right? That's not what Hashem asks for in his holiest of holy places. He says, I want animals in there, right? Because only with the darkness of your animal and transforming it into a divine level can you reach this level of shtus, to the point that the actual building itself is made out of shtus. Which means we have to take that which is below intellect, i.e. the world, from Welt, worldliness, we have to use that very thing for something which is beyond das, something which is beyond comprehension, beyond rationality. And he gets a little bit specific here. He says there's many things that people do simply because that's what the world does, right? In other words, I noticed a bunch of people. This is kind of like something true in all of Israel. If you take it, like in the rest of the world, Sunday is a day off, right? They don't even know why anymore, right? So at some level, there was some kind of a divine worship, and they switched it from Saturday to Sunday, whatever. Sunday's a day off. So in Israel, we don't have that God, right? And we don't have that religion. Even the secular Jews kind of got together like, yeah, why would we have Sunday off? It just doesn't look good for like a Jewish state. There's no such thing. So we don't have Sunday off, right? But people coming from America, and it's like they can't get out of bed on a Sunday morning because Sunday's off. Of Who said? Right? The world says. It's just that's how it is. Is there any rhyme or reason to that? You could have a whole nother day to accomplish your goals. No, it's the day off. It's one of these things, and there's many things like that. It just popped into my mind. They say, like, it's just kacha. There absolutely is zero reason for it. Just today I don't get up. Right? Why? Doesn't make sense. It's a shtusi thing with no basis to it, right? Everybody in the world wants to make something out of their life. They have a whole nother day. Why just not use this day? Because kacha, that's what the world does, right? So he says there's certain things in the world that are just like that for no reason. In other words, there's no rationale behind them, right? But devarim, like styles, fashions, millions of things, customs. However, we find that these things are like a law that you cannot move them from their place. This is how it is, right? We heard Ruiz Vartura yesterday on Shabbos, and it's also kind of a similar thing. Like, right, you go to college. In other words, it's a law. Now, what I can tell you what I did in college was I could probably done better without college, right? Like, but that's even like, there's not even a question, or at least things maybe are changing now. But like, you go through the 12th grade, and then you go and find you find either from $30,000 to $100,000 a year what your parents don't have, and you're gonna go spend it on college. Why? You want a skill? Go to apprentice. You want to learn things? Everything's on the internet now. You can get the best teachers. You can do it for half the price. Kacha, you go, throw them in the Nile. Right? This is what you were saying yesterday. It's just the way that everybody else is doing it. I don't see why I would change it. Lefi dekain hu anhagas olam. That's just what the world does. So you do it. Like, for example, politeness. Right? There's just certain things like, your fork goes on this side and your spoon goes on this side. It's like all the rules of pomp and circumstance. Like, why is that? That's just how it is. There's no reason for this, right? But it's a law. Like, you can go to school literally to find out which side your fork goes on and which side your spoon goes on, and if the napkin is folded like this. And it's like, remember the old days they had like the women would be like trained in these things. There's like home economics. You have to figure out where your fork and your spoon goes, right? And they were literally laws, completely ridiculous things, just like customary, like manner laws, So this kind of attitude where it's just kacha, it's like that. You for no reason. I don't need a reason, right? You go to the mikveh every day. Why do you go to the mikveh every day? There's really no reason for it, right? I didn't have a seminal emission. There's nothing wrong with me. I have no reason to do this, but certain time's going to come along. I'm going to go, right? Gets up at 5:30 in the morning. Why? No one's asking you to do that, right? Kacha, I'm getting up. That's it. I don't need a reason. It's just like Sunday. You don't get up. 5:30, I get up. No one else gets up. This like irrational actions. Where they're not based on any reason. There's no compelling reason to do such a thing per se, right? Or like you have a 2:30 mincha, and you might be in the middle of like a very important business meeting, but you're like, stop everything, I got mincha, and you just like put down the briefcase, you put down the pen, all your goyish colleagues are wondering where you're going. Sorry, kacha, that's how it is. We have rules that just don't make any sense, and we do them. So this worldly perspective where it's hundreds of things. It's going to say like times of day. What, you eat 3 meals a day, right? And each one has a certain time, right? Isn't that just like the law of the land? Who said you can eat whenever you want? You can stay up until whenever you want. There's no laws over here, right? But we make them laws. They're like irrational, built-in rules of the game that are based on nothing. So he's saying use that same thing. Just irrational rules of the game based on nothing, but for Kedusha. So like you're immovable in your holy endeavors, just like you're never going to miss the soccer game. I never missed the soccer game, right? Why? Is that like a rule of life? Well, guess what? Never miss mincha. Never miss a day of mikvah. Why? Because I'm going to use the shtusi, worldly, like animalistic trait for holiness. This is the idea. The Kamo al derech mashal, he says, Zmani achila, Zmani ashena, times for eating, times for drinking. Mitzad hergesh ha'olam, as far as the world just like feels, hem kavuim be'itim uzmanim. They're fixed, right? There's a time for breakfast, there's a time for lunch. Why? That's just the world has sort of determined such a thing. I don't think animals in the jungle have a time for eating. So whenever they found a deer, they're going to eat, right? It's like, oh, wait a second. honey, it's the sun hasn't risen yet. We're not just hold on. We got to get our spoons in the right place. The gam also doing business, right? In other words, it's like it's a person has like a busy schedule. They fill every minute. They're right. All these things are sort of just the way the world does it. Even though there's really hard to rationalize why it has to be like that, but nonetheless, it's tea time. There's literally a whole country that is chosen like an hour in the day that you just like stop and have tea. It's like the most ridiculous thing in the world. But it's like, what do you mean? You're gonna first have tea time, right? And you push everything off in order to you stop important things. It's tea time. And he says that these things are in general not pushed off. People are taking these things very seriously. I have to have my breakfast at a certain hour. However, we're all too familiar with this. Fixing times for Torah and Tefillah, there you're like, well, we have a chavrusa, but I have to go to the whatever, right? And whereas we have a few guys here, I think they're running around doing something, whatever, because even though they have fixed times, when it comes to breakfast, I guarantee you they're going to be there. Strike of 10:30, they're going to be at breakfast. But 7:30, I'll come at 8, right? Because it's just a weird thing. You have to use the same ridiculous nature of just cause in your holiness like you do with your worldliness. That's what he's trying to say. That's what it means. That's why the Beis HaMikdash is made with shtus, because only in that way are you actually able to really hold Hashem. If all your actions are calculated according to intellect, then you're also not going to hold Hashem. Even if you're like a really organized person, right? But even in Kedusha, right? But it's based on rationale, even that won't help you. You have to have practices which are almost like ludicrous in holiness, just like you have them in the world. Unfortunately, these times for holiness, they get pushed off entirely sometimes, chas v'shalom. In other words, you had a chavrus, you don't even come a half an hour late. You miss it that day. You wouldn't miss eating breakfast, but that you will miss. If a person will put a little bit of a calculation to his soul, does this make any sense? I told you at the end of every one of these mimers, the Frierdiker Rebbe starts speaking about like the end of life. Right? And of course, this was the day he passed away, and it was intended to be given out this day. It's a whole mystical connection, and there's 4 mimers in a row, and each one ends with this, like the following sort of like call to action based on you don't know how long you're going to live. It's very deep. And he says, does this make any sense? Who knows how long you're going to live? Who knows when his time is coming? The Midrash says, Ein Adam Shalit Lomar. A person doesn't have the dominion, the domination over himself to say, Hamtinu li ad she'aseh cheshbonosai. Wait for me, like angel of death, until I make my calculations. Until I tell my children who gets everything and where everything. In other words, I'm just going to put everything in place here, and I'll be right with you, death. So you don't get that opportunity. You don't get to sort of like get a moment where you could just sort this thing out. You got to sort it out right now. How are you giving your whole life onto something which really has nothing to it at all? Right? There's so many different areas of like people are like running to do foolish things, right? And if you think about it, like, what are you busy with? Your whole life is like, it's like, what are you spending your time on? Right? I mean, Baruch Hashem, we try to live holy lives over here, but the world in general, who doesn't have Torah mitzvahs, it's an easier thing to spot. Like, what are they running around for? What are they accomplishing? Right? The purpose of life is to transform your midos, is to connect with Hashem. That's the whole purpose of life. If you're not doing that, I don't know what you're doing. You're just running around doing shtusy things, right? That's the 2 options. There's either holiness or shtus. So if you're not involved, and you can be a non-Jew and be involved in holy things. You got your 7 mitzvahs. There's also the God of Abraham, right? And you can like tell people all about it. You don't have to be of a particular type of person to do this. But that's what you're here for. If you're doing something else, fine. You're just involved in like this animalistic shtus, which makes no sense, which Hashem put us in a whole world cloaked in that. The point is, how can you think that that's like what you're supposed, that you're just give a little bit of a cheshbon of the whole ludicrous nature of our existence for a second, and think about what you're running around, putting all your energy and time into. The ad ha'ikar, and the main thing, mashahaisa kavana b'ridas nishmasu lamata hu shochech lagamri. Whereas the main thing, which is literally why you're here, right? The intention of your soul coming into a body in the first place was what? You forget about it completely, right? I don't know. I'm busy. I'm traveling. I don't know. I don't want to get into any particulars. Everyone has their own particulars. But like what you're actually doing here on this earth, you can forget about completely. And why? How is that possible? Why don't you just like stay on your mission? You know, the Rebbe is our role model. He didn't sleep. He slept a half an hour a day. He ate like a tiny little piece of fish in a whole day, maybe a piece of chocolate. And he was just answering letters and writing Torah, and he was busy with the work. Everybody else, you're busy a little bit, and the rest of the time you're running around doing what? He says, only because of the Ruach Shtus Shemachas Ala Emes. I'll tell you why. Hashem did this to you, but he did it to you for a reason. He put you in a casing which is filled with foolishness. You're called your body. And it has all kinds of just random interests which keeps you running in different directions which have nothing to do with your true divine purpose. So therefore now you know your work. To transform this folly of the world, v'amod al nafsho, and like stand up with, and take control of yourself, v'yikvelo itim the Torah, and fix for yourself times of Torah. Don't be late, right? Come. Make sure your life is organized around the right things. What do you think about in the day? What are you actually running after? What are you pursuing, right? If it's not times of Torah, times of mitzvahs, times of tefillah, like that's why you're here. That's why you came here. So every other thing you're doing, if it's not somehow in that dimension, you have been. Don't think you can escape from this. We're all guilty of this. We're all stuck in this thing. You've been grasped by the Ruach Shtus, which is like having its way with you, running around like as though being a human being and just being on the earth is normal. It's not normal. It's crazy. It's animalistic. Makes no sense. The only way we can sort of salvage the situation is to use that ridiculous reality for its true purpose, and also make no sense in the realm of Kedusha. And again, there's no better sort of, again, the Rebbe just gives us models to see what he means. The concept that he takes a person, he calls him a shliach. It's a very strange thing you have to understand. No, you shouldn't normally have a whole life in which you're a shliach. A shliach means that you're an agent, you're an emissary. Usually you're an emissary to go take care of something, right? You know, it's very rare that an emissary goes on forever, right? You have a job, please, can you, even if it's a sophisticated job, can you go accomplish a mission for me? You're going to go take some books out of Russia and smuggle them back in. It's going to take you 3 years to take care of this. But I'm going to call you a shliach for your life. He's trying to retrain our brains to understand that we are constantly on a mission. If you're a shliach, be'etzim, your being is that you're just a messenger, constantly sent. What is my mission? I'm here to make a dwelling place for Hashem, and I never take my mind off that because I'm a messenger. This is what he was trying to impart to us by sort of giving us this ability to take this title upon ourselves, that I have no other thing that I'm doing here. What are you doing? Well, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm none of those things. I mean, I could also be those things, but I'm a messenger from God, taking care that every single moment of my life is in accordance with this game plan, because that's why I was sent here. And this affects, so to speak, I will dwell within them. When you make me a mikdash, i.e. made out of shtus, mikdash is made out of shtus. When you make Hashem a dwelling place made out of that very shtus, he dwells within you. What dwells? The ikar shechina, the highest levels of divinity. The divine light will shine in the soul. And that's what it means, Kadiskafi Sitra Achra, that when you will subdue the Sitra Achra, which is basically your shlichus 24/7, to just take this shtussiness and subdue it and transform it. That by affecting this job of transforming the folly of the animal soul, and the excitement in worldly matters, throwing your kids into the Nile, Rich the Rebbe says like is the avodah zarah of the time. Like everyone's doing it. You gotta. We say like college, is just the Rebbe brings that as the actual example in the Sikha, just because without any thought, that's what the life force of every person is. That's where they think their parnasa comes from. So you throw them in there, right? Because Paro said, Chas v'shalom, right? And so he says you have to turn that excitement, that's just like crazy. Because what about just because the Rebbe said, I'm going to go on shlichus man pa? Why? It's like crazy thing to do. I know you're doing crazy because Paro said. I'm going to do crazy because the Rebbe said. And that's exactly what it comes down to. Just be ridiculous, but for kedusha. You're going to go in the street, start with your tefillin, start asking people if they're Jewish. What are you, a meshugana? Yes, I'm like a prophet. I'm a meshugana. I don't have to make sense. And that's how you get Hashem. That's what it means that from the atzei shitim, from shtus, you hold God. Right? That you turn this animalisticness to the kedusha. B'kiyum Torah mitzvahs, fulfilling the Torah mitzvahs. And what is the effect of that? You reveal the glory of Hashem in all the worlds. And what do we say? It means all the worlds, that light which is equal in all the worlds, i.e. you reveal the sovev light, that which is in Hashem beyond grasp. So when you, in a simple way of saying the whole mimer, when you approach Hashem,